welcome to March. I sat down to film this today and had the realization that I don't think I have filmed any kind of content for our channel since the beginning or middle of February. So one of my goals for the year was to do one video a month, and I'm 3 months in and already failed at that. So sorry about that. February was very busy for us with Bennett's surgery. Honestly, his surgery was back on February 12th, and then everything after that is pretty much just a blur up until about the last week. So, Bennett's 11-month update, let me give that really quick. So he turned 11 months old back on February 18th, so mommy is very late on getting that out. We're almost to his 1-year birthday. That's okay, it still counts, right? He's about 32 inches long and still weighs right around 20 to 21 pounds. He's not gaining weight as quickly as I thought he would, but he's super tall for his age, so he just is tall and skinny, kind of like his Uncle Blake and Daddy. So not quite walking yet, very close though. Will stand independently by himself in the middle of the floor. He'll pop up and just stand there, especially if he wants some food, but he refuses to take any steps forward unless he's on his walker. If he's got his little Winnie the Pooh walker, he'll motor all around the house. It's pretty cute to watch, and honestly, I'm not rushing any of it. His first couple months of life, I was really anxious about, he's got to hold his head up and he's got to start rolling, and now I regret that a little bit, just because yes, it's important to make sure they hit their milestones, but at the same time, my baby's almost 1, and that went by remarkably fast, and so not that I want to slow him down, but I'm not rushing any of the bigger developments at this point. So without going into too much detail specifically on what was done, just because I want to protect his medical privacy online, he had a pretty major reconstructive surgery done. We knew he was going to have it done when he was born. They informed us of that. It wasn't a matter of if, it was just when. His doctors referred us to Riley Hospital first, and we personally just didn't have the greatest experience with Riley. Didn't feel as though we were treated very respectfully. I know other people have said they've had wonderful experiences with Riley, so it must just have been our bad luck, but we ended up going into Cincinnati, Ohio, meeting with a doctor at Cincinnati Children's Hospital who ended up being the one that we went with and did the procedure. So we drove over the night before. My parents went with us, and my parents were awesome. They turned that whole weekend into something very fun for Bennett. Took him out to dinner the night before. We got to stay at a fun hotel that had all kinds of things for him to look at the night before. It just definitely helped ease our family's anxiety over the whole thing. I was so grateful for them that they tagged along and were willing to be a part of that with us. His surgery was at 10 a.m. that morning, so he wasn't allowed to have anything to eat after 7 and no formula after 5 a.m. So we actually woke him up early at 4:30 that morning, gave him his last bottle, and then thankfully he was distracted. The entire surgery in total lasted about 3 hours from start to finish. I didn't get to go back with him, so I was only able to sit with him up until they were ready to take him to prep for pre-op. Any mom who has to stand and watch their baby being taken through a set of double doors that you can't go through, and to see them turn around and reach for you and cry because they don't understand, that's an experience that's very, very hard. And that breaks your heart, because the only thing you want to do is run through the doors and take him back and say, never mind. Yeah, about 3 hours, just kind of anxiously watching. They have a board where the child's number is, and you can watch the process from when they go under to when they go through their procedure, and then when they're waking up. A lot of prayers, very anxious time for me especially. Just kind of sat and cried for about the first hour. And then it got better as time went on, and my aunt and my cousin who live in Ohio brought us lunch, so that was very kind. Definitely helped pass the time to have some fellowship with them. Then we were allowed to go back and see him. We had to meet with the surgeon first, so when the surgeon finished with Bennett, he came in and gave us a breakdown of everything that had happened. And then about, I would say 20 minutes after Bennett woke up, we were allowed to go back in and see him. I could hear him crying before I even got to him in the post-anesthesia unit. But he did remarkably well, so praise God. He came in and out of the anesthesia just fine. His pain management was really good, and Cincinnati Children's was wonderful. He loved the nurses. He loved his doctor. they were over the top on precautionary measures. So we left with a topical antibiotic and an oral antibiotic for him because he had to have a catheter in for 8 days after his surgery. And then when we got home, there was a little bit of issue with healing. There was a bandage that we were supposed to remove, and it did not come off the way that they said it would. And so that was excruciatingly painful for our son. We're very thankful we have a friend who's a paramedic, and he was able to come and help us get that off, because otherwise I don't know how we would have done that. He was such a trooper, did so well with the recovery, and then 8 days later we drove back to Cincinnati to get his stitches and his catheter removed. And he did great with that too. So he's doing really, really well. I would say he's about 90% recovered at this point. We're almost a month out from the procedure, so he's healing pretty well. And I was over the top just grateful for all the prayers from everybody and the kind messages reaching out to ask how he's doing. I've got a tough boy, so I'm very thankful for that. He's got his daddy's resilience for sure. My son's surgery, I really had a very challenging time. Even though we knew he was going to have it done since he was born, I really second guessed it, because as a mom, we never want to put our kids through anything that is going to cause them pain. And I knew no matter how we did it and how effective the pain medication was, it was still going to hurt my baby. And I wrestled really hard with just the decision of knowing that you were going to put your child through something that is going to cause them physical pain in order to prevent additional physical pain later down the road. Knowing that it was going to cause my baby, assuming it was going to cause my baby trauma. And I had a lot of the doctors tell me that, well, he's 10 months old at that point. He's not going to remember it. It's a good thing to do it while they're so young, because this way they won't have any memory of it. And while I understand that he won't exactly remember what was done to him, like the procedure itself, there are studies that show that trauma, even induced by medically necessary surgeries, does leave an impact on infants. Babies within the first, especially 6 months to a year of their life, but there are studies that show this all the way up through the first 5 years of their lives developmentally, that are severely affected by traumatic events that happen in their lives and in their homes. And I started to get concerned about a week post-op, almost 2 weeks post-op, when I started to notice he wouldn't go off and play by himself anymore like he used to. He was much fussier than he typically is. He's usually a very happy, bubbly boy, not usually fussy unless it's close to bedtime or he's sick. Much fussier than he used to be, and would not let me out of his sight, no matter where we went or what we were doing. Even at places he usually was super confident, like my parents' house, wouldn't, as long as I was in the room and he could see me, he was fine. But he wouldn't be okay if I walked away at all. I just started to notice those subtle changes. He didn't laugh like he used to. He didn't smile about as many things as he used to. Just my baby's whole demeanor shifted. And so I dove into doing some research on infant trauma and what goes on in their brains and how they process that information. And because they're so little, they don't really have a great way to process that information. That's been a whole new facet of motherhood, learning how to guide my 11-month-old infant through the emotional healing process from that surgery, as well as the physical healing process. And the emotional side, I would say, is taking much longer than the physical side. And they don't have post-op meetings for emotional health on the babies. They don't even really give you directions on that. It's kind of left up to the parents to figure out. I've been learning a lot about that lately. How to reinstill trust a little bit in me as his mom and him. And I think that's been one of the hardest parts of motherhood for me yet, is realizing that when I took him to do that, I broke a little bit of his trust. Trust that's very hard earned and very quickly broken, especially with babies. And those aren't decisions that I take lightly and will never take lightly, especially now witnessing how hard it hit him. And even though he's a trooper and has pushed through it in ways I didn't even think he could, it doesn't change the fact that it still affected him in a lot of ways. And one of the best things I've learned that has helped him through that is just sitting and being present. So making an extra effort to sit down with him and play with his toys when he wants to play, or we've started reading books at nap time more than we used to, and that seems to have really made a difference for him. Just trying to teach him again that mommy's still a safe place. And that's really hard because you feel like you've been the safe place since the day they were born, and then they go through something traumatic like this, and in their mind, because they can't cognitively understand any different, you put them there and you let them go through that, even if it is eventually for their benefit. That's still really hard. Really hard. We've had a lot of change in our family in the last almost 2 years. I graduated college the week before my wedding, and then my husband and I got married. We came home. I moved out of my parents' house. He moved out of his apartment. We moved into here. We lost a house that year, and then found out we were pregnant with our son 6 weeks after losing that house. And then had Bennett right before our 1 year anniversary. It's been a crazy, crazy season of change for us. And one of the things I have really struggled with is finding balance in the midst of all of that. I have been working a lot harder on figuring out how to balance my load. And that's something that I'm not good at. I tend to be a people pleaser by nature. And so when it comes to my family, whatever I have to do to keep everybody the happiest as possible is what I tend to throw myself into. I'm not saying it's effective, nor am I saying it's necessarily a productive use of my time, but that's what I've been trying to get better at, is finding balance between having a nicely kept home, but also making time for my son, and working my part-time job while still encompassing being a part of his world as much as I can. And it's given me a new appreciation for just everything that moms juggle that I just didn't realize until I became one. Your mind is constantly dashing to and fro with all the different responsibilities and time frames and things you have to do. And I just want to encourage any other mom that's out there, especially a new mom like me, if you can, find one small part of your day where you can do something that helps you rebalance, even if it's something small. And for me, that's taking my son on a walk outside. We love to go on walks together when it's warm, or when he goes down for his nap, I'll lay down for 15 minutes in the middle of my day, which is completely counterintuitive to everything going on in my head and the list I have to get done. But I force myself to do it. Why? Because it resets me in a way that nothing else does. Or I make sure in the evening, I prioritize reading a book. Just something. And some days for me, it's only 10 minutes, and that's all mommy gets, and some days mommy doesn't get it at all. But as much as I can, I try to prioritize that, because I've hit burnout pretty frequently since becoming a mom, and I didn't used to burn out. So I've learned that my fuse, while I believe my fuse is supernaturally long, it also some days feels remarkably short, depending on what Bennett has demanded of me that day or what my home has demanded of me that day. There is an art to learning how to manage yourself on top of managing a home. Being a homemaker is not an easy job. Neither is being a working mother. But I feel like in society today, a lot of people tend to view, at least I've gotten that, when they say, "What do you do?" and I say I'm a stay-at-home mom, it's oh, well, that's nice. And my heart just kind of goes, if you only knew what that entailed. Because we carry just as much weight in a different way. The other thing, in accordance with that too, is I've had to learn to be okay that everything doesn't get done. And I wasn't somebody that used to be really list and goal oriented. I talked about that in a previous video. Since becoming a mother, I'm a little bit more type A than I ever used to be. And if things don't get done on my list, I beat myself up for it, to the point where, I mean, it's stupid how stressed I get about making sure my home is picked up and in order. And I had this epiphany one day when I was getting ready to go to bed, and Bennett left all of his toys out in the living room, and I hadn't picked them up. And I was getting really frustrated and tired about having to pick them up again. And I just had this thought that someday I'm going to wake up and there aren't going to be toys in the house. And I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to be stepping on little people's zebras, or tripping over the Tonka truck, or moving the Winnie the Pooh walker out of the way of the dishwasher for the umpteenth time. I'm going to miss this. And so I try incredibly hard to remember that no, my home does not always look like a Pottery Barn catalog. In fact, it really only looks like that maybe when I freshly clean it, and then the minute Bennett wakes up, it becomes a tornado again. And that's okay, because someday he won't anymore, and someday he'll learn to pick up his toys. and someday there won't be any toys left at all. And his laughter as he goes running down the hallway with a cracker that's leaving, I mean, I can see right now I have a trail of cracker crumbs all over my floor. Why? Because he crawled away with his wafer in his hand. Someday that won't happen. Finding a balance with it all and giving yourself some grace to say, okay, the fancy chicken pasta dish. This happened to me literally last week. I had this chicken pasta dish I was going to make for dinner, and I was so excited about it, and I'd gotten all the ingredients, and I just had a day, like one of those days where Bennett needed my complete attention from the minute he woke up till the minute he went to bed, and I was trying to get the chores done, and it was just a very long day. And by the time it hit 5 o'clock when I usually start dinner, I didn't have anything thawed. I hadn't prepped anything. And then 6 o'clock hit, and I looked at my husband when he got home and said, I have pizza or taquitos in the freezer. And that's what we're having. So that would be my encouragement. Find something that helps you recenter and find some balance. And oh my goodness, I by no means have got that figured out. We're a hot mess over here. So that's a little bit of a look into our lives. This month we have Bennett's first birthday is coming up this month. So that'll be a big event. I will try to get some content from that, although I'm really looking forward to just enjoying that day for him. It's going to be a super special party. I remember thinking when he was born how excited I was going to be to do his first birthday party, and I can't believe it already is here so quickly. So that's fun. I'll be back in I'd like to get another video in March. We'll see how much time I have with planning his party and everything like that. But if not, I'll be back in April with his 1-year update, and then whatever motherhood is teaching me at that point. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your March. Happy spring and happy Easter if I don't get on here before then. And thanks so much for watching my family story. Take care.